What has your child done that is technically wrong but you were proud of them for doing it? 1. My son, 11 years old, was ordering a smoothie at a juice bar. He asked for a strawberry smoothie but the woman behind the counter told him we only make strawberry banana smoothies. Without missing a beat my son tells the woman I'm allergic to bananas. She made the smoothies without bananas. I try to instill in my children that lying is wrong but I was impressed that he very quickly figured out how to get what he wanted. 2. My son was about 14 years old. He was speaking with some girl when an obnoxious boy, also about 14, started hugging the girl he was speaking with. The girl shoved the boy away and told him to stop. The boy, either clueless or trying to turn his embarrassed rejection into some sort of joke, latched onto the girl again. She again shoved the boy off and said to him, "Seriously, don't do that." My son was very uncomfortable and unsure if he should step in, possibly offending the girl, because he's well aware girls are not helpless and are capable of dealing with idiots, or let this girl handle him. After the second rejection, my son thought she made it pretty darn clear that she didn't find the playful hugging fun or funny and did not want to be touched. The boy, relentless, went in for another hug, but this time, my son stepped in. He told the boy, "Dude, she doesn't want you to touch her. She asked you twice already. It's not funny. Stop." The boy, with his ego bruised from his failed attempt at flirting, decided to tell my son what are you going to do about it, and shoved him. My son told the boy, in fair warning, "If you touch me again, I'm going to lay you out." The brave little boy must have thought my son was lying because he went in for another shove and the boy ended up on the rec room floor, out cold. A few seconds later, the boy ended up with a broken nose. The parents were furious at first, but when they found out what happened, they told their son that it served him right. My son had to serve a 3-day in-school suspension, because of the no-tolerance policy, but even the vice principal seemed to hint that he thought what my son did was the right thing. As for the boy with the broken nose, he got a 10-day suspension and I do believe he learned his lesson. As a matter of fact, I think my son and this boy ended up becoming friends later on in high school. 3. In 8th grade, my daughter Chantel and 2 of her friends were punished for talking in class. Almost the entire class was, in fact, talking, but these 3 girls were singled out. My daughter tried to make that point to her teacher, but was further singled out as being disruptive. The next day, I received a call from her teacher. Chantel had gone to class with electrical tape over her mouth. The teacher was angered by this and felt I needed to know about my daughter's continuing disruptive behavior. When she came home, I asked her about it. She said, "If he won't listen to me, I decided that I wouldn't talk at all." I checked with the student teacher in that classroom, a young man who was finishing up his teaching degree. He told me that Chantel and her friends were indeed unfairly singled out, which is how I know how the story went. At the age of 13, my daughter understood the power of the silent protest. Almost a decade later, I am still incredibly proud of her for doing that. 4. When my eldest daughter was 3 years old, we attended a barbecue at our new church group. We didn't know many people there, and it was raining. My daughter wandered outside and came back in to tell me that the host's teenage daughter was out there sitting in the rain, crying. She had had some disappointing news about the stables she volunteered at being closed down. I told my daughter to give her some space. I felt awkward and like my daughter would be interfering if she went back out. She looked up at me, and said, "Mama, you can't leave people crying by their own selves." She was 3. Remember. She then proceeded to find an umbrella in the hallway and grabbed a heavy 2-liter bottle of lemonade which she couldn't even lift. She dragged it out to the teenage girl, rolled it to her feet and handed her the umbrella. The teenage girl smiled, wiped her tears, put up the umbrella and lifted my daughter onto the bench next to her. They sat out there next to each other for ages, my daughter's little legs swinging as she sat with her new friend. I am so glad my daughter disobeyed me and did what she thought was right, because it absolutely was. It still brings tears to my eyes writing this today. 5. My son was 12, so, 1994. He walked up to me with a $5 bill in his hand with a huge grin on his face and I figured he had done something that his mom or someone at her office deemed worthy of remuneration. He made it obvious that I should take the bill from him, so I did, still waiting for the explanation. Puzzled, I finally asked and the grin got even bigger. I want to point out at this point, that I had the money in my hand and accepted the fact that it was, indeed, a $5 bill. "I made it," was his excited outburst. My return question was, "You made it doing what?" "No," he explained, "I made it slowly." The inflection in the statement sank in and I re-examined the bill. It was dutifully wrinkled and appropriately soft, green, and most impressively, the back and front were perfectly lined up. I had on my hands a young computer whiz, still in the field, an unwitting counterfeiter. He could have passed off the bill to any unsuspecting victim. I regained my footing, paused, and shared a moment of great triumph with him, and then carefully explained that this was a talent that he could never use again. 6. As a child, my daughter learned the same martial art that I did and by the time she was 10 had a junior black belt. Anyway, I always told her that she was never ever to use her skills on a friend or classmate. When she was 9 there was a boy in her class who also had studied a martial art, albeit a different one, but his family felt that his displays of skill were cute. Because he knew my daughter had skill, he would bother her at school, try to restrain her, try to throw her off balance, bear hug from behind, etc. I asked the principal of her school to speak to his parents, and I did as well. Nothing. So, when my daughter came home with bruises on her arm I called the principal and said, "As of this minute, I suspend the restriction that she should not use her fighting skills." He agreed. The next day, her classmate accosted her on the playground, and this time she returned the favor. He ended up being absent from school for the next 2 days, partly from bruises and partly from shame. I was, and am, very proud of her. 7. When my oldest was in second grade, I received a call from the principal of the school. She informed me that my son and his best friend had written and illustrated a book. My son, who hates to write. Wonderful. Okay. Didn't say that but thought it. She says that it is highly inappropriate and she's very concerned. She reads me the book. The story: there is a giant that farted really smelly farts and they were really loud. He decided to cut off his butt so he couldn't fart anymore. Then he decided to go around and cut off everyone's butt so there would be no more farting. I really tried hard not to laugh at this. The poor woman sounded so scandalized. So my poor kid got in school suspension for a week. Apparently he wrote the story and his friend illustrated it. They thought my son was so good that it must have been the friend's influence, so they made an effort to keep the two apart. When he got home I told him I was proud of him for writing a book, but maybe next time don't leave it where a teacher can find it. It still cracks me up to this day. My little 7-year-old with a twisted sense of humor.